All right, so I am not quite sure who came up with the whole like ranking my foundations, ranking my highlighters, ranking my eyeshadow palettes. So I don't know where to give credit. If you know, let me know down in the comments, because I do feel a little bad. I've just seen so many people do these types of videos. It's just I couldn't find like who it originated from. Maybe what I'll do is in the description box leave you some of my favorite people like who have ranked their makeup. But I thought it would be fun today if we sat down and ranked my foundations. It's probably the least exciting category to rank, but foundation is like really important to, you know, how the rest of your makeup's gonna look. So if you saw my inventory, my makeup inventory, I think that went up a while ago. I'll link it. You would know that I have 10 foundations. Now, 9 of them are actually foundations and 1 is a tinted moisturizer, but I'm just going to start lumping them all together because they're used in the same way. So if that sounds exciting to you, then just hold on and let me get my basket. Okay, so like I said, I got all 10 in this basket here. Some of them are like in those glass bottles, and so I'm hoping that I don't break anything. But we have 10. I'm just going to put the number on the screen because I will probably lose count even though there's only 10 of them. And we're going to start from the lowest ranking one and go all the way to number 1. Alright, so coming in at the very bottom, number 10 place is a foundation that I will personally not be repurchasing once I get it worked out of my collection. It is the JUVIA'S I Am Magic foundation. I have mine in the shade 650 Alexandria, in case you were wondering. Now, if I'm not mistaken, when you look at these online and you look up this shade, this is said to have like a neutral undertone, and it doesn't. It actually comes across very yellow leaning. I do have this foundation on today because, like I said, I really want this out of my collection. I'm trying very hard to use it up. So how I tone down some of that yellowness is that I over put on concealer to almost like correct it. That's my phone. But to correct it and make it look a bit more like my skin tone, I typically go for neutral leaning foundations. I feel like that's what works the best for me. So not only is this just very yellow leaning and very like misleading for being a neutral foundation, it is thick. It is like cakey. You go in with the slightest amount. I swear I go in with a pea-sized amount of this foundation and I still feel like after a few hours it just looks so cakey on my skin. At first when you put it on and you get, you know, all your powdering and your setting sprays and everything like that done, it does look okay, but then just the wear time of it like really sinks into any type of like fine lines or pores, or like it really accentuates texture. So yeah, I am not like the biggest fan of this by any means. Alright, so then coming in at number 9, this will probably glare from the ring light, but it is the Wet n Wild Photofocus foundation. I have mine in the shade Rose Ivory. So my cousin ended up buying this and then she said it was too pink for her, so she passed it along to me. I decided to try it out and it's too pink for me as well, and you know, with the name like Rose Ivory, what do you expect? The other thing is I don't know. I like this better than the JUVIA'S one, obviously, but this, the main reason why it comes in so low for me is the application process. It has this like paddle wand applicator, so you like scoop it out of here and then scoop it on your face, and I don't like the experience overall. It's just annoying. It doesn't like, I just can't get it to work right. Like I feel like by doing it with that little paddle applicator, I always end up with certain areas of my face getting more foundation than others, and then you really have to work to like blend it out and things like that. So that is why this is at the bottom. As far as like wear time, coverage, things like that, it's okay. I still like foundations in my collection more so than like the wear time and coverage of this one, but this foundation would rank higher if it had a different application method. Okay, so then the next foundation isn't really a foundation. It is the tinted moisturizer that I have. So this is from Urban Decay. This is their HydroManiac Tinted Glow Moisturizer, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Tinted Glow Hydrator. Medium coverage and up to 24 hours of wear time. So I have mine in the shade 20 Fair. This is actually a pretty good shade match for me, especially like right now in the winter. I do like the like hydrating kind of feeling that you get from this. It's more of like a satin finish foundation than like the other ones that I have in my collection. However, I do not think that this is medium coverage. I feel like this is more on the light to medium coverage, and that it is not super easily buildable. I feel like once you start building it up, that's when it starts settling into your like fine lines and pores and things like that, and it can start to look like a cakey mess. Also, if you are a oily girl like I am and you need to powder your foundation to like help it set down, help it wear longer and things like that, this does not really work well with a bunch of powders. I have had success with it working with my Too Faced Born to Glow powder, but any of my other powders, like the ones I have from Essence or Hourglass or things like that, it just looks like a cakey mess. So this will also, these like 3 that we've talked about, these will all be things that I will not repurchase once I get them worked out of my collection. All right, so then the next foundation we will talk about is from Tarte. This is their Rainforest of the Sea foundation. This I have in the shade 15 in Fairlight Neutral. So I have actually used up a full bottle of this before, and I was kind of on the fence about it then, and I ended up repurchasing it. I don't know why Haley does the things that she does, but here we are. And now that I'm on my second bottle of it, I really don't like it. It is far too light coverage, but I will say the benefit of this one is that it is easily buildable, in my opinion, like more so than the other ones where that's been my complaint. Another drawback of this foundation is it's one of those dropper method foundations, and I'm just not a fan of that. I would much rather just have like a squeezy tube or, you know, something with like a pump on it. I just don't like this for those reasons. But the wear time of this is lovely. This, we're now getting into that gray area where it's like these foundations are not terrible. Like I could see myself repurchasing them like in a pinch, I guess. But there are still like cons to having them, in my opinion. So yeah, like the packaging and the fact that this is light coverage and it is more on like the watery serum type side, and I'm a full coverage kind of gal, so a lot of this, like with all rankings videos, a lot of this boils down to like personal preference, obviously. All right, so we're still in that gray area of foundations where it's like they're not terrible, they're not the worst of the worst, but they're just not favorites. So I have the L'Oreal Infallible foundation. I believe this is the Pro Matte. Yeah, and I have mine in the shade 101.5, which is Ivory Buff. This is a little bit too dark for me right now, but I can make it work if I go in and like layer my concealer the right way and put on the right kind of powder. So I'm not really mad at it for that. However, the wear time of this is not the greatest, much like with all of these other foundations. Like I'm not out here wearing my foundation for like 24 hours, even though this claims that you could. I really like to, I feel like I put on my makeup and then I will have it on for like 6 to 10 hours is usually what I'm going with, like somewhere in between there. And I feel like around the like 7-ish hour mark, this starts to break up. It really starts to crease around my smile lines. And I'm one of those like very animated people. Like I talk with my hands and I talk with my face. And so I really need a foundation that will hold up to all of that movement around my mouth. And I do set my foundation there, but this one is just not one that really, it just, yeah, it breaks apart and things like that. It is a nice matte foundation though, so I do appreciate it for that. I'm interested to pull this out and like really put it to the test in the summertime, since it is a matte foundation and I feel like the humidity just really does a number on my skin and my foundations and really breaks them down much more quickly. All right, so now we're getting into the top 5. This is number 5, and all of these foundations from here on out are really ones that I do enjoy and that I would consider repurchasing. So the first one we will talk about is the Sephora Best Skin Ever foundation. I have mine in the shade 15.5N. This is a fairly good shade match. I think one shade beneath this would be spot on perfect, but I really do enjoy this foundation, especially for it being like bougie, like, you know, you get it from Sephora. The price point of it is really nice. I think the wear time of this is quite nice. This is just, again, one of those foundations that's more on the like liquidy kind of light medium coverage, so that's why it's ranking a little bit like lower than some of these other top favorite ones. This one though, you are able to build it up quite nicely. I haven't had any trouble with that. The wear time is nice, and I do like that this one, it's not a matte foundation, but it's not a dewy foundation, but it's also not really a satin foundation. It just doesn't, when I put it on, my skin doesn't look like blank canvas full coverage, but it also doesn't have that like dewy kind of sweaty glow that dewy foundations tend to give me. So I think it's a really interesting like finish. They've done like a really good job formulating this. I think this is one of the few foundations I have where if you, doesn't matter what kind of skin type you have, be it combination, oily or dry, I think you could enjoy this foundation and get a lot of good use out of it. All right, so here's my most expensive foundation, and I cannot believe that I like purchased it. Like obviously I like it. It's coming in at number 4, but just the price tag of it. So there's a part of me that's like, save it for special occasions. So I'm going to need you to tell me in the comments that that's ridiculous and that I need to just use this and enjoy it. So coming in at number 4 is the Lancome, and I can never remember the name unless I'm looking at it. So it is the Teint Idole Ultra Wear foundation. This has sunscreen in it. I have mine in the shade 210 BUFEN. I really like this as far as like shade match. I think it looks quite nicely. The wear time of this is quite wonderful. Again, much like with the Sephora one, this one is not necessarily a matte or a glowy or a satin, but it just looks nice. Like I find that with this and with the Sephora one, I don't have to mix in a liquid highlighter to get that right amount of glow that I want. So I do appreciate that from them. And I don't find that this one, like this one doesn't fall in, like sink into my pores like some of these other ones lower down on the list have. Like everything from here on out wears really nicely and plays really well with my skin and all the other like face type products that I have in my collection. So yeah, the only reason this one is not ranking higher is just simply, I think, for the price point. Like it is expensive, and I just feel like not myself. Like I feel like I'm trying to be a little too bougie when I'm wearing it. You know what I mean? Okay, so this next one, number 3, is probably one of my favorite foundations. This would technically rank number 1, and you might be sitting there thinking like, well, why doesn't it? Because my foundations that are in my 2 and 1 spot are drugstore dupes for this foundation, in my opinion. So I would rather, like, price does come into play, like when, you know, I'm selecting a foundation. So I would rather rank the drugstore ones higher when I get the same benefits and same like effect and wear time as I do with this one. So number 3, the Tarte Face Tape Foundation. I have mine in the shade 16N Fair Light Neutral. I love this. This wears so nicely. The blendability of this is so nice. The coverage, just everything about this that you could want. Like the wear time, just how it looks, it really holds up well. I think that this is one of the few foundations that work for me all year round. I think, again, this is a foundation where it doesn't matter like what type of skin you have. I think you could really get some enjoyment out of this. This is on the more full coverage side, which I appreciate. So if you're not like a full coverage type person, then don't try this. But I have nothing but high praises for this one and for my top 2. Just again, this one is coming in at number 3 because I have found 2 really good drugstore dupes. Okay, so it's really hard for me to rank the number 1 and number 2 spot. I feel like they're interchangeable. I feel like if you ask me tomorrow, it'll be a different answer. So this is just, as I'm sitting here right now, coming at you with my list. Both of these foundations that are in my 1 and 2 spot, I have repurchased multiple bottles of. It is something that I have, you know, just continued to love and to buy and to pan multiple times. So number 2 is the COVERGIRL Outlast 3-in-1 foundation, I think. This little CVS sticker is covering it up. I'm sorry, I can't peel that off. I have mine in the shade 810 Classic Ivory. When I've talked about this before, I have seen people leave comments saying like, hey, isn't this being discontinued? So I honestly don't know. On the bottle, it says new on the sticker. I don't know if the glare is too much that you can that you can't see that, but up here it does say new. So this is not sold on like Ulta's website or anything like that, but I have been able to find it at Target, Walmart, and CVS, and it's never been like at a discounted price or anything like that. So I don't think this is going anywhere anytime soon, and I hope not, because I do absolutely love this. I think this one is a little bit closer to being a dupe, like a straight on spot on dupe to the Tarte Face Tape than the one that takes the #1 spot, simply because the coverage of this is also like full coverage. I should put this one down so we don't get confused. The coverage of this one is also full coverage. It blends out so easily, whether you want to use a brush or a sponge, because I know we're all kind of like particular with how we put on our foundations. This does not settle into any fine lines, pores, does not accentuate any textures. I really think that this wears so beautifully. This is one of the foundations where I have tested it out in the summer, and I really like the way that it holds up with the humidity. So I will continue to have this in my collection, have this in my life. I would be so sad if they really did end up discontinuing it. All right, so then the #1 foundation, like I said, 1 and 2 kind of interchangeable. I do still feel like #1 is a dupe, a pretty good dupe for the Tarte foundation. The only reason I'm saying that it's not a spot on dupe is because this one is a medium coverage full foundation, whereas the CoverGirl and the Tarte are full coverage foundations in my opinion. So coming in at #1 is the NYX Born to Glow foundation. I have mine in the shade Light. Again, I've used up so many like little squeezy tubes of this. I just think that this wears so beautifully, and I am not typically a glowy foundation person. I think you can very well see that. I have a lot of matte foundations. This is the only glowy foundation that I have ever bought, tried, and loved. Like, it does not make my skin look like a sweaty kind of greaseball mess. If you are an oily kind of gal like me and you like the idea of like a more dewy foundation, give this one a try. I love that it's at the drugstore, so it's not like gonna break the bank. I think that it wears really nicely. I don't know if I've already said that. Oh, what I was going to say is not only if you're an oily gal, but I think that if you have dry skin, since it is more on like the glowy side, you will appreciate that. Now, I don't typically have dry skin, but I have like over exfoliated my face before and had like dry patches, especially like right here on my jawline. And I don't, like when I wore this, I didn't think that it really clung to those dry patches and made them like super obvious and super noticeable. So if that's something that you're struggling with, I would definitely give this a try. Like I said, this is a medium coverage foundation, but I do feel like I am able to build this up, and like if I'm having any type of like redness or breakouts or things like that, I can get it covered with this and not have to go over and like layer concealer and like a bunch of powders. So I just really love this foundation and can't sing its praises enough. So that was it. That was all 10 of my foundations ranked. Let me know down below if any of my favorites are also your favorites. And I guess I forgot to say this in the beginning, but ranking videos are just fun. I think it's fun. Obviously, it's all about my opinion. So if one of my like least favorite foundations is one of your top favorite foundations, then please keep loving it. We're all different. We all just have different tastes and preferences and skin types. So we can all be adults and agree to disagree, right? Right. So that is all the rambling I'm going to do. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I can't wait to catch you in the next one. Bye.